The opening scene introduces Lorenzo Vitali, a ruthless crime enforcer, as he drives towards his remote winery in Sicily, accompanied by his grandson. Upon arriving, he instructs his grandson to remain in the vehicle while he cautiously ventures inside. To his shock, he discovers that many of his henchmen have been brutally murdered. As he proceeds into the basement, he encounters Robert McAu, a retired U.S. Marine and former CIA operative who is being held at gunpoint by two of Lorenzo's bodyguards. Lorenzo questions the reason for Robert's presence, and in response, Robert explains that Lorenzo possesses something he shouldn't have. Following a brief exchange, Robert eliminates both the remaining henchmen and Lorenzo. The method he employs is rather unconventional, as he forcefully drives his gun through one of the henchmen's faces, an act that appears seemingly impossible. As Robert exits the winery, he notices Lorenzo's grandson in the vehicle and instructs the young boy to remain where he is. In a sudden twist, the young boy shoots Robert in the back as he approaches his car, making a hasty escape. Despite the injury, Robert manages to catch a ferry to the mainland later that night. While driving along the picturesque Amalfi coast, Robert pulls over and slips into unconsciousness due to the gunshot wound. After some time, a local carabiner officer named Gio Benucci discovers him in this state and offers his assistance. Gio takes Robert to a secluded coastal Italian town in Alamon, where Dr. Enzo tends to his injuries. Upon regaining consciousness, Robert learns of Gio's heroic act and grapples with the question of whether he saved a good or bad man. When Robert attempts to return home, Enzo insists on his wound needing more time to heal and offers him a place to stay. Under Enzo's care, Robert begins to walk with the aid of a cane after 3 days. One day he ventures outside again. Moving stealthily through the town, Robert evades the watchful eyes of the police. He eventually finds refuge in a quaint local cafe, where he encounters the cafe's owner and waitress, Amina. Despite his order for tea, she serves him their finest coffee, stating, "You're goddamn right." Shortly thereafter, Gio arrives at the cafe during his routine visit with his daughter, Gabby. Amina entertains the young girl while Gio hands Robert his car keys, explaining that he hasn't checked his bags yet. Gio also mentions that he's parked Robert's car behind the station, ready for retrieval when Robert feels better. In the following scene, Robert places an anonymous call to the CIA's Financial Operations Group and connects with Agent Emma Collins. He discreetly tips her off about the winery in Sicily and its connections to the illegal drug trade, hidden beneath the facade of regular business transactions. After conveying this vital information, he renders the phone dysfunctional, cutting off all ties. Emma promptly shares the information with other CIA operatives. Over the next few days, Robert familiarizes himself with the town's locals. During this time, he learns about the Camorra, an Italian mafia gang notorious for extorting and intimidating the townspeople, demanding regular payments. Robert emerges as the force of good against these villains. One day, Robert witnesses the brutal beating of a local seafood vendor named Angelo by a high-ranking Camorra member named Marco Quaranta. Marco warns Angelo of his impending return to collect money the following week. Subsequently, the gangsters converge at a large building where Vincent Quaranta, Marco's brother and Camorra's leader, is coercively attempting to displace residents. It becomes evident that Camorra's grand scheme involves commercializing the town by constructing new enterprises. In a building housing hotels, resorts, and casinos, a group of gang members confronts an elderly man in a wheelchair. When the elderly man refuses to comply, the gang hangs him from a window, leaving him to die, unmistakably marking them as the villains. On the other side of this stark divide, Robert and Enzo engage in a pleasant dinner conversation. Robert extends his kindness by assisting Enzo with his daily errands. The following morning, Robert goes to the market on Enzo's behalf and visits Angelo's shop. The compassionate Angelo refuses payment, considering it an honor to have Enzo's friend visit. Simultaneously, Emma and other CIA operatives, following Robert's tip-off, arrive at the winery to conduct their investigation. There, they discover millions in cash and bags filled with illegal narcotics hidden in a storage room, surprising them with activities previously off their radar. Emma and her colleague Frank work diligently to uncover the truth. On a rainy day, Conroy delves into the matter, seeking answers. Enzo examines Robert's wound, prompting Robert to question why he treated him without involving an ambulance or police. In response, Enzo recalls Robert's earlier query about being a good or bad person, highlighting his silence as a sign of goodness. The following evening, Robert prepares to leave town but is halted by the sound of a bell. He observes the townsfolk rushing toward Angelo's shop. Marco and his gang have set it ablaze due to unpaid dues, leaving the townspeople helpless. Robert and others help Angelo clean up the aftermath, while Gio reviews firebombing footage, contacting the Italian authorities. Robert's involvement in the local community deepens as he gradually recovers. His friendship with Amina grows stronger, and he explores the diverse cuisine of Alamon, seamlessly adapting to life in the town. However, Camora's pervasive influence in Alante becomes a more significant concern than he initially anticipated. One ordinary day, while enjoying coffee at Amina's cafe, Robert spots Emma discreetly attempting to photograph him. He approaches her, suggesting a better angle for the shot. Emma inquires about how he possesses precise information regarding the winery's illicit activities, but Robert maintains a level of vagueness in his responses, encouraging her to focus on her remaining tasks. As she departs, Emma surprisingly addresses him by his name, leaving Robert intrigued. One day, Gio heads to his daughter's school to pick her up, but receives an unsettling call from an unknown number. He's informed that Gabby's school let out earlier than usual. Concerned, Gio investigates and learns that an officer has picked up Gabby in a state of panic. Alarmed, he rushes home to discover his wife and daughter held captive by the ruthless Camorra gang. Marco, a member of the gang, beats Gio in front of his family, punishing him for interfering in their operations. The gang threatens to harm his family if he intervenes again. That evening, Robert notices Gio leaving Enzo's office with bloodstains on his face. Curious, he inquires about the matter, and Enzo explains that such incidents are common in many towns due to the Camorra. Enzo likens the issue to cancer, incurable. The following day, Robert visits the church and encounters Emma once more. She confirms that Lorenzo Vitali had been on Interpol's most wanted list for a decade, and his criminal operation was of substantial magnitude. Intrigued about why he chose her for the anonymous tip, Emma questions Robert's intentions. He skillfully shifts the focus to the larger issue, highlighting why Sicily was targeted for smuggling activities. He pledges to uncover answers soon. Emma expresses her hope to learn more in their next meeting. That evening, at a restaurant, Gio and his family are enjoying dinner when Marco and his associates disrupt their quality time. Marco demands Gio's assistance in preparing a boat for their clandestine business. Robert, also present in the restaurant, overhears their conversation and intervenes, urging them to leave the family undisturbed. In response, Marco threatens him to stay out of matters that don't concern him. In a composed manner, Robert conveys his growing affection for deep concern for the town and its people. Robert implores Marco to relocate his criminal operations, issuing a dire warning. When Marco disregards the caution, Robert swiftly incapacitates him, causing intense pain by pressing on his sensitive nerve. He compels Marco to leave his gun on the table and exit the restaurant with his accomplices. Later, an infuriated Marco plans a retaliatory attack with his henchmen, but before they can act, Robert drives a van into two of them and engages in a fierce battle. At one point, Marco holds him at knife point, threatening his life. Robert counters by twisting Marco's hand and fatally stabbing him. The following morning, Frank contacts Emma from Rome to report the latest station bombing. It's revealed that the cash found at the winery is linked to terrorism financing through drug smuggling into Sicily. Emma speculates that Naples serves as the primary drug transit point and suspects the involvement of another team in Naples. Determined to unravel the entire chain, she embarks on her mission. Emma initiates her investigation by interviewing key Camorra members and seeks cooperation from the Naples police chief. Later, the same chief attends Marco's funeral at Vincent's mansion. He shares Emma's involvement, leading to Vincent's fury. Vincent cuts off the chief's hand, warning him to focus on finding Marco's killer. Vincent sends the chief to the hospital with his severed hand in an ice bucket. Emma receives a call about the police chief's situation, and shortly after gets a call from Robert, revealing Camorra's ties to the drug cartel linked to the station attack. Robert's call unwittingly saves Emma from a bomb attack on her car planned by Vincent. Following the attack, Emma is rushed to the hospital, where she informs Frank about the Camorra. Frank assures her he'll handle the operation. That evening, Vincent takes Gio and his family hostage, threatening to shoot them unless his brother's murderer is revealed to the entire town. When Vincent fails to receive the information he seeks, he shoots Gio's ear and threatens to end him with the next shot. At that moment, Robert emerges, urging Vincent to release the captives. He's prepared to face torture, but not in front of the townspeople. Arrogant as his brother, Vincent refuses, insisting that the locals must witness the Camora's consequences. However, as the townspeople start recording the ordeal, the gangsters retreat. That night, Robert infiltrates Vincent's home and silently eliminates his bodyguards one by one. Startled by a drop of blood on his forehead and shattering glass, Vincent narrowly escapes, but grabs his gun. As he attempts to contact his now-deceased gang members, Robert corners him. He forces Vincent to ingest a lethal dose of his drugs, and Vincent flees the mansion. Collapsing on Naples's cobbled road, he succumbs to a drug overdose. The next morning, Robert visits Emma at the hospital, and she expresses gratitude for saving her life. He drops a bag of cash on the floor and shares the story of Greg Dyer, a man who lost his pension in a cyber attack. This revelation makes Emma realize that Robert had tracked the cyber attack's trail to the winery, where he eliminated Lorenzo and his henchmen, retrieving the exact cash owed to Greg. Intrigued, she inquires about their connection, and Robert clarifies they've only met once. In the following scene, Emma travels to Boston to deliver Greg and his wife their lifetime earnings. Greg questions the generous benefactor's identity and the reason behind the kindness to a stranger. Emma, too, wonders about the motive. At CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, Frank hands Emma a package containing her mother's diary and a note from Robert. She's surprised to discover that Robert was a friend of her parents from the CIA. The final scene portrays the Alaman residents celebrating their victory in a football match, with Robert enthusiastically joining the celebration, showcasing his dance moves. It's a moment of joy and unity.